Okay, so let's dive in. There's definitely a sense of, well, things moving quickly, lots of interesting stuff happening in digital assets right now.
Yeah, definitely feels that way. And today we're focusing specifically on that stack of articles, those new snippets you shared with us.
Exactly. All dated around May 29th, 2025, give or take.
Right. And the idea is we want to sift through these specific pieces, pull out the most important bits, maybe some surprising facts, and just help you get up to speed quickly on what these sources are highlighting.
So cutting right to the chase based on this material and looking through it, there's one claim that kind of jumps out right away from an article about market intelligence.
Oh, yeah, that one. It's pretty bold. One source leads with a claim from Arkham, the blockchain analytics folks.
Mhm.
They're reporting a pretty significant discovery about a major corporate Bitcoin holder.
Strategy, right. The company everyone knows holds a ton of Bitcoin. Arkham thinks they found, what was it, a massive 87% of their reported stash.
87%, yeah, that's the number in the source.
Wow.
And what's interesting here, like the source points out, is what this says about the capabilities of platforms like Arkham, providing this kind of visibility.
Right, tracking huge holdings like that.
Exactly. It adds this layer of transparency, maybe, that wasn't really there before. And that could, potentially change how people think about what these big players are doing.
That number, 87%, it really feels significant, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
kind of underscores how traceable these assets can be, even when held by big companies. Okay, so shifting gears a bit from tracking specific coins to um, broader official sentiment. One of your sources picked up on some pretty striking comments from a high-profile U.S. official.
That's right. It directly quotes the U.S. vice president. Apparently, she's speaking to a big crowd down in Austin, Texas.
And the quote itself, at least as presented in this article, seems really clear. It says, "Crypto and digital assets, especially Bitcoin, have become part of the mainstream economy and are here to stay."
Yeah, pretty direct.
And the article frames this specifically as reflecting a shift.
It does. The source emphasizes this as, a big statement coming from that level of government, actually acknowledging digital assets, Bitcoin specifically, as mainstream and here to stay. Well, according to the article, that's a notable change in how things might have been talked about before. It kind of lends more weight to the whole sector.
It certainly suggests a level of maybe official recognition that wasn't quite so explicit previously. Okay, so we have market analytics showing more transparency,
Hmm.
high-level officials saying it's mainstream. How are companies actually behaving in this environment? Your sources also covered a very specific move by Metaplanet,
Yes, Metaplanet. Another company often mentioned for its Bitcoin strategy. One article details a specific financial action they took.
which was
They issued bonds, $21 million worth, and get this, zero interest bonds.
zero interest. Okay, and the purpose was explicitly stated.
Yeah, the source is clear. It
Hmm.
was to acquire Bitcoin. Apparently, an investment group, Evo Fund, bought up the whole lot.
So this isn't just like using spare cash. They're actively financing Bitcoin buys.
Exactly. It's presented as a very deliberate finance strategy to boost their corporate Bitcoin holdings. The source kind of highlights this as using financial tools, not just cash, specifically for Bitcoin buys. It suggests a certain level of conviction, right? Willing to use debt for it.
That's a really concrete example of corporate strategy in action there. Okay, moving over to stablecoins for a second. One source mentioned something about Ripple's stablecoin.
Right, Ripple's RLUSD. The news was that it got listed on Euler Finance.
Okay, and Euler Finance is.
The source describes it as a DeFi lending protocol, decentralized finance. So listing RLUSD there, the article says, is about diversifying the options for lending and borrowing on that platform.
Gotcha. So it's about pushing that stablecoin into more parts of the DeFi world, broadening its use beyond just trading.
Yeah, seems like the goal, integrating it deeper into that ecosystem.
Okay, so stablecoins expanding their utility. Now, let's look at a few items focusing more on specific market action and some other coins mentioned in your sources. There's a bit of a mix here.
Yeah, one article kind of bundles a few things. It touches on XRP, some activity on Binance, and this other project, BlockDAG.
Right, I saw that. It mentions some analysts looking at XRP, predicting, well, pretty massive potential gains. Also pointed to Binance whale activity, big holders making moves surging.
And then that same piece highlighted BlockDAG. It talked about its development, potential for big returns. The title even threw out a 1000x number, which always grabs attention, and it mentioned a really large pre-sale figure. What was it, $273 million?
Wow, okay. Big numbers.
Yeah, and the source sort of ties these three XRP views, Binance Whales, Blockdag, Presale, together, claiming they show signs of like real adoption, developer interest, and strong buyer momentum in different corners of the market.
Interesting mix. Then there was another piece focused just on Caspa, KS.
Yes, a CASPA article. It talked about KAS showing signs of steady accumulation, people holding on to it.
And it mentioned a specific metric, something about supply lockup, nearing 70%. What does that generally mean, supply lockup?
Well, in simple terms, it usually means tokens that aren't actively circulating. They might be staked or just held long-term in wallets, not readily available to be sold on exchanges.
Okay.
So when the source says CASPA's lockup is nearing 70%, the implication is that a huge chunk of the total supply isn't currently on the market or moving around.
And the suggestion from that source is
Right.
less selling pressure, strong belief from the holders, kind of a bullish signal based on who's holding and how much.
That's the angle the source takes, exactly. Looking at the supply side, the holding patterns, rather than just price charts.
Got it. Different perspective. And lastly, there was one more comparison piece, wasn't there? Comparing SUI, Solana SOL, and Blockdag again.
Right. That source mentioned that, established coins like SUI and SOL were gaining ground, showing momentum.
But it seemed like it used that comparison to really spotlight Blockdag's growth. It specifically called out $10 million in pre-sale growth in just 1 week.
Yeah, it definitely highlighted that figure. It positioned Blockdag's quick pre-sale fundraising as particularly noteworthy, kind of using that rapid $10 million jump in 7 days to illustrate its momentum, according to that specific source, against the backdrop of others also doing well.
Okay, that's quite a range. So looking back across just these few sources you shared, all from late May, we've got market analysts claiming they can see almost all of a major corporation's Bitcoin.
Yeah, that Arkham claim.
We've got the U.S. Vice President quoted saying crypto and Bitcoin are mainstream and here to stay.
Acknowledged at a high level.
A company using zero-interest bonds specifically to buy more Bitcoin.
Metaplanet strategy.
A stablecoin getting integrated into DeFi lending.
Ripple's RLUSD on Euler.
And then this mix of specific coin activity analyst predictions for XRP, whale moves on Binance, Blockdag's big presale and rapid growth highlight, Caspa's supply lockup suggesting holder conviction.
It's a lot of different angles, isn't it? Almost like a snapshot from various points in the ecosystem, all pulled from the articles you provided. Shows a lot of different kinds of activity happening simultaneously.
Right. So you've just gotten a quick, concentrated look at several pretty distinct but relevant news threads that were shaping the conversation around digital assets right around May 29th, based entirely on the material you wanted us to explore.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, maybe, for you to chew on. When you see all these different pieces together, claims about tracking huge existing piles of Bitcoin, top-level officials calling it mainstream, companies finding creative ways to buy more, stablecoins weaving deeper into finance, and specific assets showing various signs of momentum, from pre-sales to holder behavior. What does this whole mix, this variety of activity, collectively suggest? Does it signal growing confidence, a particular kind of evolution in the space? Something interesting to consider based on these headlines.